So I realized last week I failed to follow up on my office endeavor, so I figured I would just make a note of it real quick to mention that functionally at least, uh, our basement area has now successfully been converted to office slash additional seat, like waiting or meeting space or whatever. So office with room for another person to sit, then the fitness space, and then studio space is actually set up over in the corner. It's not, of course, finished out, but I've got a couple of backdrops in place so that it's useful.
Cool. Is it different enough that it would warrant a picture?
It is. I don't know I don't remember how much you remember in general. So, but I'll send you a picture. So if I'm sitting at my desk, this is what I see when I look back toward the bathroom.
Okay. Yeah. So your desk the short end was perpendicular to the opposite wall that it's currently situated against now, so that you no longer have a cubicle area, but the whole room is now an office. And I have that picture from, I guess, last week. And
yeah, I sent
was it last week or 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago. I did go ahead and send another picture of the desk. It's changed a little bit, but like you're not going to be able to really tell. I've straightened up some shelving and all.
It looks like I will say the thing that I noticed. The two things that popped out on the right side, in your desk area or on your desk, is you've got it's journals. It's it's not a stack. I guess it's what is it when you have a stack that's perpendicular to being stacked and put in as if it were on a shelf? Because you have more than half a dozen journals in between bookends.
I do.
Is it still a stack? I guess it is a stack because in the library they call it the stacks.
Yeah, I would assume so. I've never heard any other specific term other than to place on a shelf, but that's a different action.
I guess maybe, yeah, maybe if I remember and have the thought to do so, I might look up the etymology of stack, because which was it first? So, and the other thing I noticed you've got, it looks like three guitars.
Correct. I have 3 down here and 1 upstairs. Technically 2 upstairs if you count the inexpensive one that I first bought when I was starting down this endeavor. Because I technically still own that one. It's still the first thing to drop. I will eventually get it, damn it. I don't know how old I'll be, but I'm not going to give up on this slow process of learning to play.
And then you have a Grid Studio. I see the Grid Studio. It's an original iPhone, correct?
It's the 4.
It is the 4? Okay. I have the 4 as well. Why did you go with the 4? Have we talked about this? We probably have.
I loved the physical feel. It was the first one with the squared edges, and it felt more like a camera. It gave kind of that visceral, feels good in your hand feeling.
The 4 was the iPhone 4 was a significant iPhone. Like it was, I mean, the original iPhone was cool. It was a cool. The original iPhone changed mobile phones. It changed computing, really. Like it changed the entire computing industry. Everything is following mobile because of the iPhone. And there wasn't, there were companies out there doing their thing. BlackBerry was, made a dent, but the iPhone was truly revolutionary. There's not a lot of things that we can look at and say that was truly revolutionary, for better and for worse. But the iPhone 4, I got the iPhone 4 as well for similar reasons. It was the first, the Retina display, and being able, even though it was 720p, being able to have high resolution pictures and video on your phone was a game changer.
Yeah, it was significantly better than what came before it, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like the camera in the iPhone 4 was like, this replaces my point and shoot for a lot of people. Like there was no longer a need to, there was a lot of people that just like, yeah, I don't think I need a point and shoot anymore. And it only got better after that. So there's that. And,
And I had to look it up real quick to make sure. The iPhone 4 was the first one that I carried as my camera for like personal travel, or like in this case, what I was looking at were pictures from where I went to Colorado for Apple, and I did not take my regular camera. I just relied on the iPhone 4.
wait, why'd you go to California? I mean, sorry, why did you go to Colorado? Oh, Genius training. I
When
mean,
I
Lead Genius, for a Lead Genius, right?
Yeah, when I was doing the stint at the Boulder store.
I did. I did the same thing, except for I went to, not the Boulder store, a different one. But it was between Boulder and Denver. Anyway, and then I remembered that we were lead geniuses at the same store at different times. I like it. The other thing that I think probably should be the most noteworthy thing, I got stuck on the second picture, but the most noteworthy thing is it looks like you have a lot more space down there.
It feels like it. It could, because it feels open now.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing I really lost, in the grand scheme of like storage and things that I've moved around, the only thing that I really lost was the standing desk that was behind the other desk, which is what I had the synthesizer on. But it feels like I pulled far more out of here because the refrigerator moved into the garage, which is what opened up the studio space. There was an extra dresser down here that has been repurposed for Jacob. And then there was a freestanding closet that moved into the garage as well, which is where I hang the keys after I pull them out of the wash and just let them hang air dry. Which is to say that it's fine in the garage, just like it was fine in here, you know. Yeah, so far, so good.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks like you could do a little more. Is there a thing that you do in jiu-jitsu for just like solo practice, like the moves without the non-sparring?
Yeah, you can turn most things into some sort of drill. I have the grappling dummy. Yeah, I have the grappling dummy so that I can drill other movements that do require, somebody to at least have the positioning. Like if you're wanting to drill contact. Yeah, well, if you're wanting to drill muscle memory for like using your legs to choke somebody, you kind of have to have at least an arm and a neck representation somehow to, clamp around. And so that's the benefit of the grappling dummy that is in the other picture, sitting on the floor.
Yeah, I saw that. He looked depressed.
Yeah, always does. Scares everybody too that doesn't expect to see a person.
So that's most people that don't live in your home.
Yeah. Not going to lie, it took a good month of adjusting to it when I first got it.
So I had a little bit of it's kind of follow-up. Last week I had talked about the show Sports Night, and and I said that I was like, even before I knew who Aaron Sorkin was, I was like, yeah, I gravitated toward his work. In Sports Night, there was an episode where they mentioned Philo Farnsworth. He was the inventor of the first fully functional all-electric television set, and very few people know about him because his invention was stolen by RCA, which we all, we've all heard. I don't know. Is RCA still a company that's still around, or is it defunct? I don't know. It's either defunct or it was bought by somebody. That's my guess. Anyway, real-time follow-up. It was bought by General Electric. Anyway, they reference Philo Farnsworth, and at any point in time, had you asked me what was your favorite show that you saw in New York when you were there, and I would have said the Farnsworth Invention. And it was a fantastic show. It starred Hank Azaria, and that was really cool because almost the only times I've ever seen him, he's voicing a cartoon character, characters from The Simpsons, and occasionally he's the scientist that was in love with Phoebe Buffay on a few episodes of Friends, and one of his best roles to show his not diversity as an actor, but his what's the word I'm looking for? This is going to be a night where I'm looking for a lot of words. Yes, his range as an actor with his character from The Birdcage. Anyway, I would have told you the Farnsworth Invention. It was a short run. It turns out it was written by Aaron Sorkin.
So I did not know that prior to looking it up. When I glanced over the notes, I was like, this sounds familiar, like I should know something about it. And so I looked it up, and really didn't know anything about the story. I had just heard it mentioned at some point in the past, apparently. Just enough to have, passing familiarity with the title.
I remember thinking, I wish they would make this into a movie because I want to watch it again. And it was it had a short run on Broadway, I think maybe months long. I'm not sure, but I think it was. So at the time, my former brother-in-law he had moved to New York and was there because he wanted to act. And honestly, I think he would have been I really think that if he had I think he could have been on Saturday Night Live. He was I think he was good enough for that. But that world is, it's having the talent, but also knowing the folks. But I think he is the one that recommended the show to my ex-wife and we went and I loved it. I will say that it's the best show that I saw on Broadway. But, that's because Quentin Tarantino did not have a show on Broadway.
As of yet.
I will say, right. The show that I would say would be a close second is The Wedding Singer. My former brother-in-law said, "Hey, I've got tickets to go see The Wedding Singer. Do you want to go with me?" And I'm like, "The Wedding Singer?" And he was like, "Yeah." And I said, like the movie, and he said, yeah, and I was not familiar with the concept of that they take movies and make them into Broadway musicals, and I was like, okay. And I remember going to see The Wedding Singer, and the act he wanted it was a Broadway actor that he wanted to see before they started replacing the is it the initial cast or the opening cast? I don't know what the correct term there. But he wanted to see him before he left, and he was on. He had announced when he was however many shows he had left when his last show was going to be, and we went and saw one of his last shows. I don't even remember who it was, but it was good too. And I will say it was good. It was good in the sense I think there were like three things from the movie that had to be in the show for me to be like, this is acceptable. Or rather, if these three things are not in the show, then this is not acceptable adaptation, because they're just like, the best one-liners from the movie. And every single one of them was in the show. But they changed the ending of the show just enough to make it fresh and not just a copy of the original movie, and did it in such a way that wasn't boring or reaching or derivative. It was, I was appreciative of that.
I've never watched an adaptation of a movie, but I did see where Back to the Future was getting the Broadway treatment.
It did.
It made me curious.
Oh my God, I just came across a fact today about Back to the Future because it was just in time for the new budding market of VHS home videos. Back to the Future sold for home video in 1986 for $79.95.
Wow. I didn't remember that.
We were too young. I think you would have been 7 midway through 1986.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, for sure. It definitely explains why we had so many things that were taped off the TV when that became a thing.
Well, that was what the VCR was initially marketed for, not for home video, but for
Being able to watch or catch shows, being able
time
to go
shift.
back
Time
and-
shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, they called it time shifting, and which I was too young to know that. I was not. I was too young to know that, and I did it. I did the calculations, and adjusting for inflation, that VHS cassette would have cost $234.50 in 2025 dollars. Isn't that unless the guy who gave the stats gave it in, adjusted for inflation, but he didn't specify. But no, it's got to be, because the way, let's say, like at some point, VHS cassettes were, like by the 90s, you want to go rent, you want to go buy a movie. You're looking at you're looking at $20 to $30 maybe.
No,
So,
because I remember when DVD hit, 20 seemed like it was kind of the sweet spot where some would sell for closer to 30. And I remember it being right at first, it being somewhat of a, well, why do I shift and jump on this instead of just picking up another VHS tape or two?
yeah.
So it had to have been more like 10 to 15. Because there was a price. Well, I mean, I guess maybe something brand new could have still hit 20. But I remember there being a little bit of a price discrepancy. And I don't remember it going over 20 unless maybe it was a collector's edition or something.
I remember. So I think the first movie that I bought was in 1995. I bought The Lion King. And I know I paid more than $20.
Well,
Somewhere
Disney's
in between
an outlier.
20. That's true, but between 20 and 25. My point being is that if you adjust, if it was 70, I guess to get to $80, we're talking about 25 of between 25 and $30 for $1986. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think that $79.95 was adjusted for inflation. I think that is how much people paid if they wanted to own that movie. And then if you adjust it for inflation today, we're talking about $234.
Certainly not outside the realm of possibility for people to really decide to pay for.
Well, that's the thing. And, and this is where I don't want to pick, I don't want to pick on this generation because they don't really deserve it. Excuse me. Something inside of me was trying to get out. But boomers have this concept that technology is super expensive and everyday things like, rent or mortgage and car payments and so forth are real cheap. You just need, that's why they want to pay you an experience. But it's flipped.
Yeah, I mean, there's
the thing. Technology luxuries used to be very expensive in the 80s and the 90s, like sometimes prohibitively expensive. And now you can stick a screen on anything and it's incredibly inexpensive.
Yeah, it's not the only reason, though. I mean, sure, you can. It's very easy to look at the evolution of technology and the way prices changed from early, like prototyping to early adopters to mass market and so on and so forth. But it's not the only reason. And I don't think it's the driving factor in why certain things are skewed either. I think the prevalence of internships during that generation's era of casual university really are what pushed the want to pay you an experience thing instead of any proper like negotiation, because the expectation is that you have to have some work experience to get a job. That at the end of the day, that's the expectation, and it's BS. Otherwise, there wouldn't be entry level jobs. But
Right. I don't.
that's the big skew.
Well, I think there's a whole thing with, when we were graduating high school, the promise, and I don't think that this was a malicious promise. I don't think that they were trying to pull anything over. I think they legitimately believed this because this is how the world worked for them when they were that age, and that was all you need to do is go to school, get a 4-year degree, and I'm not even going to say that you have to work. You don't have to even grind you don't have to burn the candles at both ends. You just need to show up, be accountable, put in a good day's work, and have time to go home and have a good evening. The 40-hour work week. And I saw folks by I saw boomers at the end of their careers like really grinding it out because they wanted to make sure that they had the right amount in their retirement fund, and so they ended up working a bit harder than maybe they initially started with, but that's sort of the world that they created for themselves in that time, and that's the world that they are leaving for us. And this promise of a 4-year degree just ceased to exist by the time we were going to college. And we all had in our head, oh yeah, the 4-year degree, and I should be good to go, and I can get a good job, and I can earn a living and buy a house and be okay. And at that time, when they were interns, yeah, they could afford a house with they could afford their mortgage payment with the change that they found in between the cushions of their seat. Could they get a big screen TV? No, they had to save up. They had to save the whole year for their big screen TV. Today, I can get a big screen TV for less than my mortgage payment.
I was wondering where the comparison was going to come exactly, because I could get multiple TVs for less than my mortgage payment.
Right. And the world is the world is not better. What would have been, who knows what the economics would have been if wages kept up with inflation, because they didn't. And there are a lot of I don't necessarily want to say that it was malicious, but it was greed that has kept the wages from keeping up with inflation. And who knows what the world would have been like if the trajectory of those two stayed in line with each other, constrained, like when you adjust an image and you're like, let's constrain proportions so that we don't skew everything. And how much further will we be in this world with technology and so forth? I don't know. But that was, how did we get from the Farnsworth invention to that? I don't know. I'll re-listen to it.
And then for follow-up, you can tell me, because I don't remember.
So the other thing I put in our follow-up and pre-flight was I was wondering during beta season if Apple just really cranked up the transparency, or cranked down, which would it be? Increase the transparency beyond where they actually think that they should ship, with what they should ship in the final release, or the gold for, the 1.0. And so that as a way to temper developers and those who download the public beta to, let's make it overly transparent so that they complain about that, and we'll shift it where we want it, and then they'll be okay with that. And I had that thought a couple of times, but then I heard a pretty good. After I put that in the notes, I heard a pretty good, compelling argument that that's not the case from an episode of ATP, episode 646. I don't remember what the argument was anymore, but I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm going to have to cross this out.
There have been multiple times where people have hypothesized that Apple has done something similar, because it kind of makes sense from a standpoint of, if you are wanting to make a visual change and you don't have a good baseline for what's usable necessarily, or what a range for what's usable, or just however you want to describe it, like take it to a certain point, put it in front of a larger subset of users, and see what happens. See what the complaints are, et cetera, et cetera. The main reason I wouldn't think that Apple does that on a regular basis with the betas is because you've got a group of people who are, in theory at least, trying to adopt the new design language and trying to make it work, or update apps and all accordingly in a way that maintains usability. And so you wouldn't want to give your development efforts, I guess, for lack of other phrasing, you wouldn't want to provide that time at a time when you knew without a doubt things were going to change drastically from a visual perspective. That would be the only reason I would think that that wouldn't be, a driving force. Now, something like, live activities or something that's not necessarily as developer impacting, I could see pushing stuff like, okay, if we update this often, let's get some good real world performance testing on, battery life that's outside of our conditions, as opposed to, if we update this many times instead, or, things that are less developer impacting and more trying to find the right blend for performance over function over a range of devices that are outside of your controlled environment.
Yeah. I think even on that, I think I like further refine my thinking on it. And it's like, I don't think that they're pushing it so far just to show that. I don't think they're pushing it beyond what they would want to do, and to get to evoke a backlash to then correct it in the next beta. I don't think they're doing that anymore. That was initially what I was thinking, or wondering. I wonder if they're doing that just to help so they can do what they want to do. I no longer think that. But I do think, I was going to say, whatever complaint exists out here in the real world, there's a version of that complaint that exists within Apple, because there are thoughtful developers and designers in the company that have, years and even decades of experience that we don't. And, or let me rephrase that and say there is a concentration of designers and developers within the company that are going to have the exact same every complaint is going to be mirrored in the company, maybe slightly differently. And I think maybe what you might see is that marketing is pushing for a certain look for marketing shots, because every image that I saw of the new design language across all the platforms look fantastic. I was like, I see that and I was like, oh, I'm ready for that to be on my computer. I'm ready for that to be on my phone. And so I think that the folks in marketing over there have are pretty influential, and they can have that kind of effect because we want to do this marketing shot. And so they got their marketing shots, and then now they're like, let's tone it down a bit, and you're going to have to deal with that and make some slightly different marketing shots.
Certainly an interesting theory. I don't know that I've put that much thought into it in the past, but it wouldn't, like, hearing that as an explanation, it certainly wouldn't surprise me if the marketing engine in general has more pull than you would think, just by way of nature of the company's development.
Yeah, I mean, they have the marketing team has a strong influence and sway within the company. And so, yeah, I think more so than most companies. It's a showman. It's a company. It's a Steve Jobs was a showman, and I think that is in their culture.
Did you see the recent news that Jeff Williams will be retiring?
No, who's Jeff Williams?
The current COO, the one who typically you've seen him on stage with the watch, if it's not Kevin Lynch. But I don't remember who the replacement or who was going to shift and take over operations. It's whoever was VP of operations currently. But the key takeaway, the thing that I saw of interest the design teams are going to shift to report directly to Cook. They've been reporting to Williams, and they're going to shift to Cook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
I don't know what my real thoughts are there yet, other than that seems odd. Like it seems like
really
it's probably a
does.
placeholder in preparation for like reshuffling a little bit, because I don't remember the full details of the announcement, but effectively Williams will be stepping back as COO. He'll continue to lead the design teams until his retirement, his actual retirement. So the winding down activity is to continue to lead the design teams, which will eventually then report to Cook upon Williams' actual retirement sometime later this year or toward the end of the year, I think.
Jeff Williams is the guy I saw last year when I was at Apple Park.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw him like 2 tables away. I remember thinking, he's a dude that's in the videos. I just don't remember who he was. You know, he wasn't Federighi or Jaws or Eddie Q or Phil Schiller. Those people I would have recognized.
Yeah, that's probably my one negative takeaway from all the keynotes. Like I like that they're showcasing people who are doing it, you know, not taking anything away from them. But I did love when it was pretty consistently, this person's going to do this section, and you really got to know their personality better as a result.
I'll say that I'm glad we don't see Eddie Q that much anymore. I don't dislike him. I just don't think he was. I don't think he had I think his stage presence was as good as Tim Cook's.
Yeah, that's about
just
right.
a different a different way. Whereas like Federighi, he's kind of been the new shining star.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, with my statement, I just miss Schiller.
I was gonna say I do miss Phil Schiller for a couple of reasons. One, the dude is intelligent. Like he is an intelligent man. He knows what he's talking about, and he genuinely is excited about what he has to show. It's like, it's like a kid, and it's like a kid who's like a little kid that has the same. I don't want to say he's like a little kid. He has the same enthusiasm as a kid who just built a cool Lego and wants to show you all the bells and whistles of it. He's excited and he's proud of the work, and that really, it really comes across. I was gonna say, even though he's I've never really heard any critique of him, but I think in a subdued way, Johnny Cerrugi is like that as well. Like I think he's excited about the technology and he's excited to be putting it out in the world, but I don't think it necessarily comes across the same way as Phil Schiller. But I think that enthusiasm exists there.
I can see that too, and I think part of it is just the loss of translation.
I like I can get excited about something, but I'm not going to be able to show that kind of I personally cannot show that enthusiasm like others can. I just am not. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I'm not good at speaking in front of people in that way.
Yeah, I can understand that. But what I was thinking about with Cerrucci was just that his accent and all makes it difficult to understand if he's not being careful with enunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of his mannerisms maintain that reservation to make sure he can communicate it. But if you pay attention to how he talks about things, I can certainly see the same enthusiasm under the surface.
So I've heard this talked about a number of times, and there's even a shirt on the Basic Apple Guy's website in his shop called "Let Tim Cook." What do you think? What do you think about him and as the CEO of Apple? Like, what do you think? What's your take on his tenure there?
A loaded question in a lot of ways.
I know.
I see the same kind of over dedication to metrics that you see in leadership, or I'm going to say leadership or management changes in many organizations,
Yeah.
but I see it tempered with a realization that it's there. And what I mean by that is it hasn't been as extreme as it could be by a long shot. It's like he recognizes that there are things that metrics can't necessarily tell him, and he recognizes some of those things have value, but it's not going to stop him from trying to quantify it in some way.
I was going to say, but he wish he could.
Yeah. And so I can appreciate that there's not the Jobsian kind of distortion factor where this is going to be done, damn it, or nothing's going to be done kind of thing. Whereas I think instead it has gotten us to well, these are great, but your price on storage is just asinine and it's fucking up the consumer in every imaginable scenario. Those are the things that I attribute to, I won't say Cook's legacy, but Cook's stewardship of Apple, where certain things are just not in alignment with other things. Like, it's one thing to have a premium product, and it's one thing to, really aggressively go after the best components to make them function the way you want them to function. But there's also a point where you don't shift to being anti-consumer as much as Apple has given its past. And I don't want to make it sound like they've gone horribly overboard either. I mean, there are a lot of things they do that are still consumer first in ways that I appreciate. It's just not the same Apple focused on freeing up the creative genius of the end user that you had under Jobs. For better or worse, there are some people that this is a better incarnation of Apple for, especially when it comes to corporate environments and trying to leverage, Macs across multiple types of environments that you maybe wouldn't see under Jobs, just because there was some willingness to invest there. But there's definitely something that I dislike about the Cook era Apple, and the thing that I can point to illustrate it is the exorbitant memory and storage prices on anything that you want to buy, and the lack of the ability to change it after the fact. Which we've talked about plenty of times, but it to me that embodies the problem I have with Cook's stewardship now, being kind of the point where this is a problem for me, and it's a problem that has culminated under Cook's guidance to get to this point. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, it does. It does answer the question, I think. And I was thinking this was happening in the Steve. This started in the Steve Jobs era with iPhone, and they began with the iPhone to condition us that every storage tier up is $100, and that's simply that's not how much storage costs. But that's where it started, and it's now it's taken a turn for the work. I mean, it's been amplified in a way that's across the line. That's just exorbitant storage fees. It's not even like if they were a company that was focused on the server side version of whatever file you have is the canonical version, that would kind of fit into that narrative, like the way Google does. With Google, what's on the server is canonical, and what's on your devices should be looking at this, should match what's on the server. But that's not that's not even what Apple does. To some degree that should be what they do, but it's not. And so it's really they like their big fat juicy margins, and storage is one way to just bump those up. Just let's give you an almost unusable. The base models have a practically unusable amount of storage and an exorbitant fee to go up. And it's not, with the exception of the Mac Pro, Mac Studio, and now the Mac Mini, you can't change that. And I did look, and there's a company, I think you can get a module or component. You can change the hard drive. I can't remember if it's $300 for 4 terabytes or if it's $300 for 2 terabytes. But I remember looking and be like, oh, that's pretty expensive. But then I went, for however many terabytes it was, thinking of just like, let me get an NVMe or something like that. But then you go look at, as compared to Apple's prices in the configurator, it's still, maybe a third of the cost of whatever storage amount it was. It was a third of the cost, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, I agree with everything that you said about Tim Cook's stewardship of Apple. I don't know that I feel like there was something I was going to add, and it wasn't, I did have the thought that he's like a freak in the spreadsheets, but it wasn't that I thought was additive. But now I can't remember what it is. But I will say one of the things that I dislike that they've done is their form of advertising. I know it was once a rule, and I would expect that it's still a rule, but there's a certain kind of, apps cannot use push notifications for the application to advertise something to you. Do you know if that's still a rule or not? Or an App Store guideline?
I'm not sure. Because I haven't... I was trying to think if I ever saw anything listed, and honestly, I just haven't really explored push notifications because the 2 apps that I've currently got, I don't have a use for them.
Right. Well, I remember years ago, it was a rule and it was blatantly ignored, and there was no enforcement or accountability around that rule. And I saw a few days ago, Rene Ritchie released a video on his channel blasting Apple for doing just that. I didn't get this, but apparently Apple pushed out some ads promoting the F1 movie. I'd be okay if they would just put the F1 movie in my library without asking me. I'd be okay with that. And when they put the U2 album in my library, I was like, I understand why people are upset, but I don't care. And I'd actually invite, go ahead and put a free copy of the F1 movie in my library. I'll take it.
I think I saw a notification about it, but it would have coincided with being able to view the trailer and it being in theaters at the same time. Like it seems like, if I remember correctly, the push notification was to view the trailer or something to that effect. Something that was ambiguous, even to an extent, about whether you would call it advertising or not. Because it came from the Apple TV app, which I would expect to notify me about something that I've shown interest in or something similar.
Yeah, when you have the Apple TV app selected, maybe not selected, but when you have it, when you've navigated to that, so that if you push the center button, it selects and launches the app. I appreciate, hey, here are the new things that are on here, because there's if anything, they haven't. I don't know if Apple's promoted their content enough. Because as a thought experiment, I wanted to see all of the Apple original programming, television or I guess the television show format and the cinema format. And there's a lot of good stuff that I just did not know about. And it was more extended. The list was longer than I was expecting it to be. And I've even seen shows that just didn't get renewed because of the audience wasn't there. And I've watched a few of those shows, and I'm like, I understand why it didn't get renewed. I understand why it didn't make the cut in terms of, people wanted to watch this show. But they were all, none of them were like, oh, I wasted my time on this show. None of them felt that way. So yeah, the thing about the F1 ad, what I thought about was that I did think that it's like, why am I seeing ads in Apple News Plus subscriber edition? I was like, I don't think I should be seeing ads here, and that kind of bothers me.
Well, I think we've talked about news
We
ads
did.
before anyway. Um, I don't know that I have a follow up from that though. Like as I was thinking about the statement that maybe they haven't advertised enough. I mean, yeah, because it's relying on discovery. I think my reading of it is that they've tried to walk the line carefully between letting people know about stuff and being accused of exactly that, over advertising because it's their platform.
Well, I think that when I say I think, I guess I should really clarify here. When I say I think that they should be advertising more, I don't mean on their platforms. I mean,
Yeah, I knew what
the
you
other
meant.
day, yeah, I was gonna say I was watching a video of from the Daily Show on YouTube, and oh my gosh, it was very difficult to watch because of how many ad breaks there were in this. It was like Comedy Central had it cranked up all the way to 11 for the maximum amount of ad breaks here, and it
I'm
was
starting to think YouTube's doing it.
it could be, but there are some channels. Uh, there are some channels that don't have as many ads as others. All of the major studios, like ABC has, when I watch Colbert, CBS has more ad breaks than when I watch, the Four Eyes Furniture Building channel, as a comparison. And that guy, he's making he does make furniture, and he does sell furniture, and it's expensive furniture. He sells tables that are tens of thousands of dollars. But he has said repeatedly that the major source of his income is his channel, is his YouTube channel. So, but he has ad breaks in his videos, but there aren't nearly as many ad breaks in his videos as there are in some other channels of the same level of production, where it's a guy who, it's a person who has developed a really good channel. Like I think Snazzy Labs, for example, has a similar number of ad breaks as Four Eyes Furniture, but it's a fraction of the number of ad breaks that the Daily Show had, or the Daily Show channel had.
I mean,
And it was the same.
I've certainly noticed more ads as well. Like, I'm not arguing that it's a problem either. I just wonder if Google is doing it with certain
They
popular
probably are.
content,
Well, it's like let's say if you I don't have a channel. Apparently, I have like 2 or 3 videos on YouTube that I posted. I forgot about them. They're from 10 years ago, and Becca and Jude told me that they found them and watched them. I made an attempt to create some ASMR videos, and so they're out there. So anyway, I don't I think it's 3 videos, so I never was able, I haven't had enough viewers or subscribers or whatever. I don't know what it is that you need. I think it's the number of subscribers that you have that will get you to a tier where you can monetize your channel. And I think at that point, I think you can, I don't know if you can choose like, I want every X number of minutes to show this, show an ad or whatever. I don't know what the meter is. I don't know what the tick marks on the knob are. But I would expect that if it's something like I want a high low, maximum, YouTube is changing what maximum equals. That's where we're starting to go with that. That was a lot of talk about. There's a lot of words for not a lot of payoff.
Yeah, but I mean that would make sense, especially given the ambiguity of a lot of different controls for anything on the web. If you think about, I guess if you think about any kind of slider to invoke, least intrusive to most intrusive, that's always going to be a range that can be manipulated on the backside.
Yes. Well, what I was going to say, when I was watching that comedy video from The Daily Show is I saw the same Apple ad probably 10 times in that 20-minute video. It was really frustrating to watch. And it was a good ad the first 2 times I saw it. I didn't, I saw it the first time it made its point. I saw it the second time and I was like, I didn't get anything new from this, but it was good, it was a good ad. I did one of those times did notice that the non-iPhone phone that they featured in the ad, it's the ad about it's got these surveillance cameras that are birds that look like surveillance cameras, and it was there to promote that Safari was a private browser, and they showed a person with a non-iPhone, a non-Apple phone to browse, and as I looked at it, I realized it's not a phone at all. Like it wasn't any brand of phone. They weren't, it wasn't a Slam. It's just a non-iPhone. I think it was probably just a prop in that it wasn't even a phone at all. And it was made to look different enough to not be anybody, be like, oh, that's made to look like a Samsung, or that's made to look like a Pixel.
I mean, I guess it's nice that they're playing nicely.
Yeah, but if all, I guess the point, where I was, initially going with all this is like if every one of those ads was a promotion of a different show or movie on Apple TV Plus, that would have been slightly more bearable. And it would have been, and I would say it would have been like, I would have even come away as like, okay, I'm glad that Apple's, pushing all these different shows as hard as they are. But you know what? I am not in marketing and I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. But I think also the people in marketing don't have the kind of control, and I don't think that they wanted anybody to see the same ad 10 times in a 20-minute, on the same 20-minute video.
Oh yeah, I'm sure not. There's I don't know all the details because it's not my forte necessarily, but I know there's a line to walk between repeat messaging and having it become something that a person accepts at face value, but even then it's not, 10 times in 20 minutes as an example.
It's 3 times, like Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Yeah, it's like repeat exposure over enough time in between to make it a callback, if you will, instead of completely new information. But not, 30 minutes later, you could memorize the commercial kind of repeat, because then it's just frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, even the best ad, because there are ads out there. It's like, oh, I want to watch this ad because somebody did a really good job. I mean, there's a significant portion of the people that watch the Super Bowl for the ads and not the throw ball match. So, yeah, there's a. But even so, I was gonna say, even though, like, if I saw the best ad that many times in a row, I'd be like, yeah, I'd been like, I was tired of it. There's even an ad that I really like that I have saved. It's a travel ad. It was one that I saw quite a long time ago, and then I couldn't find it for a while. But it was for, I want to say Puka Travel. It's a Scandinavian ad, and I think they do they plan trips in the Scandinavian area, part of Europe. And what made the ad so good was, or at least for me, was that they had used a clip from an Alan Watts lecture. And if you're not familiar with Alan Watts, please check him out on YouTube or Apple Music or Spotify. His lectures are free to listen to on most platforms that stream audio, even if it's audio with video, because I think they'll have a static image. I don't think there are many videos, because I think he was a modern day philosopher, and he passed away in probably the 70s or 80s.
Was the ad that you're referencing, is that the one that you shared with me prior to the start of the climbing project?
I might have.
I think so.
What's it? The one that it looks like a cold day in the north?
This has been long enough ago. I don't know. If I watched it again, I would be able to tell you for sure.
I'll send it to you again, and I was planning to send the audio for this portion of the podcast because Alan Watts is just I found him to be one. The content of his lectures they're deep and they are understandable. Like you don't have to be a deep thinker to get it. He's made deep thinking accessible, and two, he has a soothing voice and a delightful accent.
Let's suppose that you were able every night to dream any dream you wanted to dream. And that you could, for example, have the power within one night to dream 75 years of time, or any length of time you wanted to have. And you would naturally, as you began on this adventure of dreams, you would fulfill all your wishes. You would have every kind of pleasure. But now let's have a surprise. Let's have a dream which isn't under control. Then you would get more and more adventurous, and you would make further and further out gambles as to what you would dream. And finally, you would dream where you are now.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work, or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.